to do that.
Done.
Very exciting.
Posted.
This is so great.
Going live.
I know, right? We're probably already live. This is the fun part where it's like, we don't know if we're live or not, and we get to just like roll with it.
They get to see me checking my hair.
I know, no, seriously, there's a lot of prepping and primping.
No. Checking my eyes, checking my hair.
Oh, it's so funny. All right, hang on. I'm not seeing it over here, but I'm sure we're already live because that's what it loves to do to me. Yes. Oh, yeah, we're live. This is great.
Unicorn.
Perfect. So here's this, and I'm going to silence that. And this is so great. I kind of like that everyone's just getting, oh my God, I come back to Zoom and you are transformed. I love it. For everyone watching, this is what creativity looks like. This is fantastic. Awesome. So welcome everyone this week to So Ask Us. We are talking to Brianna Drohen, who is the co-founder of Launchspace, which is housed in the Orange Innovation Center. And we're going to talk about both of those things and then so much more. Brianna, welcome. Thank you for joining us from your unicorn life and activities.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So for folks that don't know, that have no idea what Launchspace is, what is Launchspace?
So Launchspace at its kind of bare basic is a makerspace. We're a 13,000 square foot makerspace in the Orange Innovation Center, which is a repurposed mill building in Orange, Mass. So we're in a business community of about 35 to 40 businesses on average. And we, like I said, take up about 13,000 square feet of that as a makerspace with an art and design room that has sewing and fabric art and a painting and canvas section, screen printing, leather working, marbling, photography. We have a robotics and IT space, which has a laser cutter and 3D printers. We have a full pottery studio with 11 wheels and 3 kilns. We have a fully equipped wood shop. And then we have a metal shop that we're getting online, and we're really doing this based on community demand. So right now it looks like it's going to turn into a glass blowing studio. So that's the makerspace. Yes, so that's exciting. Makerspace, I mean, glass blowing and also blacksmithing, because we have a forge. So it'll be kind of like a hot shop. That's just based on a bunch of glass blowers that are chomping at the bit to get a space in here. So, of course, as you can imagine, with both those studios, there's a lot of regulations and hoops and red tape because it's a very dangerous art, you know, with the propane and oxygen and everything you have to think about. So that's what we're working on right now is working out the kinks of infrastructure so that we can get the space in here, because it's an awesome art. And I will pitch that my brother is a glass blower of 20 years with real glass. So he will be one of the founders of the space, which is even more exciting.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah. So that's the maker space. And then there's also and I don't know, do you want me to go into this whole?
I do.
Okay, good. So then there's the Pleasant Street School building that we leased from the town of Athol, and right now it's a vacant elementary school building in a school zone next to the high school and middle school. And we started leasing that thinking that, you know, this is the makerspace. We also, within our business model, is makerspace, workforce education and business incubation for rural revitalization. So we really need a second location. That's floor level, that's all the things that this isn't, which is classrooms and floor level access. And one of the big things that we found when we were doing our outreach, when we first got our planning grant, was a community kitchen, because the Franklin County CDC is the leader in our area, but they have a waiting list and they're very specific. They started, you know, so many years ago and found their niche, which is food processing. And so we really wanted to start that life cycle again based on the community demand. So community kitchen is really important. So this school building, we're looking at getting outfitted to have a community kitchen that'll deal with food processing and production, restaurant and food truck commissary, and then healthy eating education. And there'll also be a daycare there where we really want the daycare to be focused on, and we're actually going to put out an RFP for the daycare piece of this that will be focused on garden and wellness education of all ages and outdoor natural science education, because it's also the playground leads to some trails. So kids will be able to spend a lot of time outside, you know, weather permitting, weather and season permitting. But we really want this daycare to have a focus, not just be any daycare. And then the rest of the space, there's land for small scale agriculture. So businesses who are incubating and doing food production out of the kitchen can grow some of their crops on the site, plus space for community gardens for the actual community. Hoping that we can get some funding for some greenhouses so people have access to year round. Home user community garden space. And then also the classrooms will be broken down into studios. So artisans who are coming out of our makerspace or are in the community can come and lease or become an entrepreneurial studio member of Launchspace and have their own independent studio space with storage, you know, street level, so it's easy for in and out access. And so there's also that business incubation, and then classroom space so that we can have our partners. We're partnered with Franklin County CDC, Greenfield Community College, Mount Wachusett Community College, Center for Women in Enterprise, and New View Communities, and Athol Credit Union to provide financial security classes, workforce development classes, entrepreneurship classes. So we'll have a classroom there dedicated to be a transition space for all of this education coming to the community, and then also a space for co-working. So that building is really like a community-centric revitalization with focus around creative economy and creative and agriculture economy, because they're so strong in this area. So we really want a space to incubate and foster that.
Wow. That's amazing. We're just gonna like time out, pause, and like really take in everything that you are working so hard to make available with amazing partners.
Yeah.
And the thing that really strikes me in what you're talking about, because when people ask me what creative placemaking is, I always say, you know, it's leveraging arts and culture to drive healthier and more inclusive economic development. And that's kind of like what I say about it. And the word culture, I think, is always the one that could be further explained. And to me, maker spaces are sometimes, hopefully, ideally, that sort of nexus of arts and culture, because culture is, you know, touches on everything from, you know, who we are, where we come from, how we're raised, what's important to us, traditions that we uphold in our lives, new traditions that we come, all those kind of things. And what I hear, especially in what you're saying, is that the community is asking for things. There's a strong history of agriculture and self-sufficiency and creating things that Launchspace is sort of tapping into and reviving to a certain extent. And to me, that is the heart of healthy economic development and healthy economic recovery. Because any town we're talking about, right, whether, you know, and certainly some more than others, depending on what the history is, but any town that we're talking about in any of the 3 counties, there's a lot of history that we're working from. And one of the things I've really enjoyed about connecting with you is that you and I both are working in these fields where knowing the history is a real benefit to knowing what that community might want to see. And then also being able to kind of move forward from it. You know, Cinda calls it respecting the past, but not living in it, which I really take to heart. So how do you go about kind of gathering from the community or from your own research or from partners at the table, what priorities are, what's important, what to go after first, because you have a lot of moving parts to this. How do you sort of prioritize and check in along the way to make use of all of this info that's coming?
Yeah, so when we first got this seed grant, got me unicorn.
I love it. I'm a little jealous.
I came in a plant behind behind me for things like this. When we were first got the seed grant, what we did, the seed grant was to prove feasibility and then go for some infrastructure funding. And what we did was we went to the community, did events, started cultivating those partnerships to ask them, especially such established as the Community Development Corp in Franklin County. They've been around for 30 years. They have a really good pulse on what's needed, not only for agriculturally, but also for just general business development. The town managers, you really want buy-in from your municipality. So talking to them about, what they see their needs are or their wants, because you want to make sure that you're aligning with their plans. Because if you're not aligning with the town, if the plans of the town, and the town is the best voice to go to or to seek when you're looking at an economic development project of this scale. But we went to different events all around the community, set up a table, talked to people about the project. And this is, like I said, this is when it was getting seeded. So this was, questions of, explaining what it is. And it has changed a lot since then. It's stayed the same as far as the core of a makerspace, but it's grown into this huge, economic development, community college, access. And but that was just based on it just snowballed in a really amazing way of what the community, what people were like, oh, we need this here, we need this here, we need this here. It has really turned into, people coming to us and asking us what we're doing and if we're doing it, to a point where we're actually having to say, we really need to stay focused. We need to stay focused on what we have on our plate already, because there is so much excitement around this idea. But when we were doing the planning grant, we were looking to get like 30, the funding agency was like, if you can get 30 people to say that they are interested in this project, and we ended up getting 80. And before the application was submitted, we had 120.
Wow.
So, it was and we got the largest amount of funding because of that than any other organization in the state to date. So, we saw that there was interest from the community. And like you said, historically, the New England in general, but these rural mill towns that are creators and makers and hands-on, that skill hasn't really gone away. It's just been siloed because we don't have these industrial complexes anymore where people are coming together and making. So that's kind of the idea of this is a really community building behind it. But I think as we're growing, we have our core residents that we have these letters of interest from, and, newsletter list, and, people coming in for tours and getting interest as we're slowly reopening. But I think going to the partners has been the most beneficial, because we're a newbie on the block, and they all have track records and interest in really partnering with us, because the North Quabbin region, as beautiful as it is, lacks resources. And so what our position is being a facility and facilitator of partnering with strong resources and bringing them into the community, instead of trying to recreate wheels that are already created elsewhere and are successful.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think is a really important thing to model and, to communicate about. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think so many of us, the word silo comes up over and over and over again, I think in work that a lot of us do around the Valley. And so it's so important to remember that there are resources and connection points to be made outside of our town, outside of our region. So that I love that you point to that. And I'm curious, and I feel like I should share with folks that are watching kind of what the connection point is for you and I. So, when I started this interview show, it was very much focused on the Mill District, and is still. And I think part of it is that through you and I met through, being on an advisory board for some projects at GCC, which is a partner for you in Launchspace. And so I got to really hear more about Launchspace through meeting you. And it's one of those things that to me feels like even if people aren't necessarily traveling from the North Amherst community up to Orange, though I highly recommend that everybody does, because there is so much going on at Launchspace and at the Orange Innovation Center. I didn't even realize there were like 35 to 40 businesses there, even though I was there the other day. But to me, really using this platform to open up and offer to people things that are going on in all these different towns, it just helps us all be aware of the resources that are out there or the potential partnerships that are out there. So as you kind of continue to build the infrastructure, as you say, around the projects that you're working on, and you're seeking out partnerships, what has surprised you about maybe partners that you found further afield or kind of out of left field that you were like, oh, that is a great partnership, or that is something that maybe you hadn't thought of asking that organization or individual to be at the table and then realized that they really had a role to play?
There isn't a lot. I think our partnerships are very intentional.
Yeah.
And because we offer kind of the gamut of everything, it's like nobody doesn't not fit in.
Yeah.
One that I can think of that, you wouldn't really be like, why would a credit union want to be a partner to this? Is because, the president of the credit union, Corey Fifield, is on our board. But, and that's not the reason why, but it's the reason that's how the conversation was opened up.
Yeah.
And we were talking, one of our board members, actually the co-founder, Alec McLeod, was talking with a local business, and he was saying, what types of programs would be helpful for your employees? Because we were talking about workforce development and stuff like that, and we were thinking some type of training center with this particular business. And he said, you know what, I would love to see, and I would pay for my workers to go as financial literacy and security training, because his workers live paycheck to paycheck, but he knows that they don't have to. They just never, it's not in schools anymore. It's not in high school about how to balance your checkbook, how to save money, how to open a bank account. It's just not taught anymore. So we were having this conversation together, and Courtney was like, well, Athol Credit Union, we're big into community. We're a community credit union. What we could do is we could offer some financial literacy classes through Launchspace that these companies could take a part of it, and their employees could be educated about how to save money and what the benefits are of it. I mean, there's a lot of obvious benefits of it, but there's, if you think it's really hard to do, or you think you just don't have enough money to do it, that's, there's things to learn there that you can actually save some money. So that is one that I think will be very beneficial to the community for at any age. But that is something that we weren't like, oh, this is something we're going to plan to offer. It was something that was requested from someone in the community and fulfilled by one of our partners.
That is so cool. That's so cool. And I agree. That's an amazing thing to be offering, and a little outside of the traditional sort of makerspace thing. I love that you've been able to continue to grow the concept without it. Everything feels like it fits in. It doesn't feel like there's, sort of any mission creep going on. It's like all of that can really fit under this umbrella of a makerspace, workforce development, business incubation. You're amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's about revitalization, and revitalization is based on what the community needs. So it's like, if I had someone here for a tour yesterday, and his wife wants to do community acupuncture in the space, and he wants to do community meditation. So those are not within our wheel, like not within the makerspace model, but they're within our revitalization model, because makers, makers, artists, creators, entrepreneurs all need time to kind of step back and clear their mind to be able to be successful and be,
Yes.
So, he said, I don't know if that fits in. And I was like, well, it fits in. It doesn't, you're not coming here to teach a class on making something, but you're helping a maker be more successful. So, as a human and as whatever their purpose is here in the space. But, those are the types of things that I feel like fit into the very, very, very broad spectrum of revitalization.
Yes. Oh, I love how you said that idea of stepping back and being able to take that time. So I'm okay. I have two directions I want to go, and I'm thinking about it. I'm going to go, the first thing I want to go into is you and who you are, because I think I start to hear sort of similar stories. Our stories are similar in the sense that we both grew up in this area. You grew up in Wendell, and we both sort of left, came back again. And I think the thing that really stood out to me when you and I were chatting on Monday to kind of prepare for this call, you made sort of an offhanded comment about being like an event planner in Miami when you're 27, and then like coming back and doing something that feels totally different, but at the same time we are planning an event together, which we'll talk about later. And so that was kind of how it came up, because event planning is something that can roll into just about anything at some point. So, but it made me curious about kind of your trajectory and what your journey has been to this point. I mean, how did you end up in this moment of co-founding this incredible revitalization organization after event planning in Miami?
Well, I grew up in Wendell, so I grew up in a very small town with an incredibly strong community. So, and I didn't really understand that aspect of it growing up. It was taken for face value, because, it was what I was around and it was my environment. So I didn't really know the difference until I left. And I appreciate, there's a comfort to me getting to being around people that and getting to know each person in your surroundings, much different than a hotel. And I'll step back a little bit and say that I graduated from UMass in hospitality and tourism because I wanted a career that would travel. I would travel the world and meet new people, but also stay in a pod kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, and I ended up in country club management. But there's a membership there where you get to know your membership. It's different than a hotel where you're it's a revolving door and you don't get to really make personal connections with your clients or users. And from there, I went down to Miami and was an event planner, and that was so fun. That was like the best job ever, to be an event planner in Miami and like being paid to like live this very lavish life. But it definitely became apparent that it was not as fulfilling as I thought it was, or thought it was going to be. And, I remember having this really, this epiphany at an event where, it was for a corporate client, and it was like, $500,000 event. And I just kind of looked up, I Googled what $500,000 could do, what country could it feed? And I forget the country, which is really silly, but it's a country in Africa that it could feed for 3 years. And so at that moment, I was like, I don't think this is what I want to be doing for my long term, though it was fun and I had fun doing it. I think I need to kind of move on. And then I went up to New York and Hudson Valley and ran a catering company there. Very farm to table, like really cool, right near the Culinary Institute of America. So I had amazing staff, worked with amazing staff. And, that was just, an amazing position. and just seeing the historical venues and doing off-premise catering. And I loved being a part of, erecting an event in 8 hours in the middle of a field and having chaos in the kitchen and in the front of the space, and nobody knew what was going on in either. They were two totally different worlds. And I was a part of creating and controlling that so that the guests had no idea that people were throwing pots at each other in the kitchen, and the people throwing pots at each other in the kitchen didn't know how, that everything was smooth. It's just these, and there's something about that I really enjoy. Just having this ability to control two worlds at the same time. But again, the food waste of that position, that was hard for me. And then I think I was just kind of like done with the industry as a whole, because I didn't know where I was like trying to make the right moves, and I didn't really find what I was looking for. So I moved back here and took a year off. And I met Jack Dunphy, who owns the Orange Innovation Center, at an event. I joined some boards just to like get to know people.
Yeah.
And there was a mill building owner summit that this organization I was involved with was putting on, and the gentleman who owns the Orange Innovation Center, Jack Dunphy, I met him, and we hit it off. And so I started working for him. He didn't really know what he needed. I didn't really know what I could do, but I knew, like you said, that event planning and hospitality is probably the most transferable skill set that you can have. So I knew that I could, and having a good business sense, I knew that I could help out. And then for 6.5 years, I helped grow the business community, bring new tenants in, create community within the businesses, offer resources. And that's really where I started creating these partnerships and created Launchspace as a business. I co-founded Launchspace out of that position. It was kind of a two-pronged thing. One was to get some infrastructure into this old building that he was just dropping money into. And I was kind of like, the state needs to help out a little bit, just because this is a community anchor facility.
Yeah.
50% of the downtown businesses in this one building, and the state should help in this old mill building. And the other prong of that was that this will also have a symbiotic relationship with the building and the community, is that we're feeding potential tenants to the building, potential, business incubation. And then Launchspace started. And then, with the pandemic, actually the position with the Orange Innovation Center was dissolved. So I shifted over to 100% Launchspace. And that's kind of year of like really pushing this to fruition. And it, the silver lining of this whole pandemic is that it gave me the space to really step back and be able to do this. We did spend a few months making PPE, as many makerspaces did. But the past 6 months, I've been really trying to get the doors reopened safely, new partners on, and bringing in new resources to get this space opened. And, originally the two spaces were going to open on different years, and now they're opening parallel to each other. So I'm working on getting one opened and one planned and opened.
Right. Oh, that's huge. Thank you for sharing that kind of overview. It's really interesting to just hear the paths that people take, and like the moment in which you find them, to be like, how did you get here? It's always so interesting. And I so hear you on transferable skills, because I think that's something so many of us, especially if we start as artists or makers, we have to kind of do that check-in sometimes of like, what's my sort of valuable skill here? And I agree, hospitality and tourism is a good one.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious, this was the other path I was going to take, and you just naturally brought it up. So I'm curious, through this period of COVID, especially as we're talking about event planning, you and I both are, I think, extroverted and big into events and, gathering people and building community and doing all of that part of the work. And I know for me, COVID really threw this wrench into not only what my work was, but also a certain part of my identity, which was I had built around bringing people together and having to totally transition that. So I'm curious for you, sort of the different ways that this pandemic touched the work that you were doing and how you felt yourself pivoting or how you found a way to pivot through this time. I know planning, as you say, it gives you that moment to step back. And what do you see now as part of getting people to gather again, or at least making it known that that opportunity might be there? And we'll talk in a minute about reopening and events and everything. What do you see as your role a little bit in also the creation of, I don't know, comfort around that maybe, or encouraging that?
So, I mean, of course, the pandemic was a real challenge. I'm just going to take this off to start again.
Oh, no, really?
I
started again. Headache.
So, I mean, the pandemic, of course, created a lot of challenges. But for this particular organization, it created a lot of opportunities because I was only giving about 20% of my time to it or less in some ways. And so it was just kind of not being pushed along successfully. And, what happened was we were planning on opening throughout the winter months of 2019. So we started hosting events in the space in October. We had one October, December, and then again in February. And we had hundreds of people in the space, and they were very successful. We had pop-up shops for makers for the holidays. We had community events with our local legislators. And people we were starting to gain momentum. And then, of course, we had to close in March. And at that time, and then my position with the Orange Innovation Center changed. And at that time, I really, me personally, I was like, I don't know, what am I going to do? But then I just naturally, I think that I've always been someone, when I was 12, I used to have like a little cafe at my parents' house. I've always been like an entrepreneur, or just always had to have a purpose. And so I just naturally moved into Launchspace and the PPE and, just had to have something to do. With the pandemic, it really cut us off. And after building momentum, so having to build that momentum back up has its challenges, because we've been building out and trying to open for a long time. And so we don't want to cry wolf with the community another time saying, we're opening. We want to be like ready and it's open. And it's interesting, looking back at where we were at the end of 2019, thinking that we're ready to open, and where we are now, I am happy that we didn't, because we just didn't have, I've learned a lot about running nonprofits in this last year, something that has a lot of access to resources has opened up because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Our home, they're willing to share. You can connect with them anywhere in the world. There's this want and need in some ways for connectivity. And like, for instance, I had someone in Vietnam, help me out on a project. And because it was her, she was a subject matter expert on it. And it's just interesting time where you have kind of these support networks that are building. And I think I'm diverting from your question.
No, that's okay though. My question is just a little like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, now that we're reopening, you don't know with these spaces. I've never run one. I'm not coming from a nonprofit background. I'm always outside of my comfort zone, probably like 4 days a week. I'm just outside of my comfort zone on this uphill learning curve, which is exciting and exhausting, emotional roller coasters. But there's a vision there that I have so much passion and belief in of this project can make a huge impact on a small community, and then, like you mentioned earlier, be modeled. And we can take this model and put it into different similar communities, or make it scalable to different communities of what you do to revitalize a community. All right, I'll put my try back on. No.
He was jealous of your unicorn. He's like, we have ears. No.
Yeah, I definitely, there's, and right now there's a lot of momentum. Right now, there's what to me is a positive change in the administration that is putting money towards economic development, specific around job creation and business incubation and acceleration, and the things that we're working on. So I see a very bright horizon for us, and a lot of similar and like-minded organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I so appreciate all of that. Feel free, yes, always to, leave my questions behind. And I think
I don't even remember what you asked.
I don't either, really. It was but one thing that you said that I really relate to, and that I think is so interesting in this moment, as anyone who's trying to lead anything or reopen anything or build any kind of community relationship, is that crying wolf thing. And I think that's an interesting way to say it, because I think there is a feeling that I share around, I want to be supportive, I want to be helpful, I want to create a beacon for people to follow, because this time is nutty and crazy. And then at the same time, we're in this for the first time. So trying to offer that sort of, touch point and I don't know, ability to say, okay, we're reopening, and to know that that is going to have an emotional impact on people. That's going to have, for business owners, saying that things are reopening, that has a real financial impact on them. So then when you have to step back from something or roll back, I feel like I'm hearing a lot from leaders right now in all different sectors, a hesitation to commit to something, to commit to a reopening date, or commit to putting something out there on social media, and recognizing that we might have to roll those things back. I mean, optimism right now feels like a real dice roll, and at the same time is so important and does help people sort of recover emotionally and mentally and feel some safety in reconnecting in person or otherwise. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that that is very real for business owners and nonprofit organizations and anyone who is in a position of sort of putting a stake in the ground and saying, this is what's happening on this timeline. And we all, I think, feel a little gun shy around that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, not as much now. I actually just got my first vaccination yesterday. It was, it's a little, my air was a little still a little sore, but I think that, I think now I can, not that I'm going to plan it. I'm not going to setting a date. I'm not starting doing the marketing, but I can really start telling people we'll probably have a grand opening in July or August.
Yeah.
I think by then, that'll give us enough time to work out kinks during this very slow moving, soft opening where we're having members come in. Because we're still literally creating on the fly some of the programming, because it really, as a makerspace, it is really built around the membership. So we can't really create this whole program for people that aren't in the space yet, because we could make all this effort to do this and it doesn't meet their needs or their wants. So we're things are being built on the fly as we're reopening, and we really want all those kinks worked out, but also we want people to feel safe. And I think by July, August, I think the community will be pretty much fully vaccinated. Then you run into how will it be handled if people are not vaccinated and how you check it, which I think is a huge question for everybody. And, what is that going to look like? We're a newbie. We're not looking to create wheels. We're going to be looking at what other people are doing. You kind of mentioned something earlier that made me think about it. We're incubating. We're still a startup, but we're also an incubator. So we're not fully ready to be incubating other businesses yet, obviously, because we're incubating. But it's just interesting to think about that we're a business incubator that's incubating ourselves. So we're actually using the resources that we're putting together for business incubators and using them on ourselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. What a great reflection. I mean, you really are testing the model before you fully put it out there. I hadn't even thought about it that way. That's so true.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I'm really excited about our partnership with GCC and their ideation center. Because they're creating something really cool over there. And this is something that it's when and I don't consider myself a subject matter expert in this at all, but I use the term accelerator quite a bit. And I just till recently realized that that's not a term that most people know, is the difference between incubator and an accelerator. I think we might have about that on Monday, and it's come up quite a bit, is that I've mentioned acceleration instead of incubation, and people have been like, well, isn't that incubation, or what's the difference? What we're working on with GCC is more acceleration than incubation. And there's different incubators that have, like a tech incubator is going to be different than what we're doing. They're very venture capitalist driven. They have their fab labs. They're very Boston based. Our incubation is definitely more around creative economy, small scale agriculture, where you pay more to be in our entrepreneurial program, but you have access to our partners and some just guidance and hand-holding and someone to come to when you have correct questions, and we can provide direction. And that's something that I love. I love being a navigator for people because of the connections that we have, that when people have questions about something, I at least can direct them somewhere. I might not have the answer. But then there's the acceleration program that GCC is working on, that we'll partner and they'll offer our members, which is more about that you have a business established, or you're at least few years in and you know what you're doing, but now you need to pivot in some way, whether that's scalability, product change, evaluation, whatever it is. And that's what acceleration is. Acceleration is more like accelerating your existing business it usually deals with scalability and product evaluation. But we want to be able to offer those to the area, have those resources in the area, because there are businesses here that if we can scale them here, then that benefits the community and economically.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad that you brought that up, and especially the difference between the two, because I agree, incubation has become a little bit of a hot word, which I'm saying in a positive way, because if it's a hot word, it means it's happening a lot, which I think is really important. And until you and I talked on Monday, I had not really thought about the difference between incubation and acceleration, and definitely don't hear outside the tech industry, as you point to, the word accelerator used very much. So I think it's great that you've identified the difference and the importance, and can see your way through to a partnership with GCC. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
You're
Thank
so
you.
awesome. How many times did I say that? So I know we're running up close to time. Folks who are watching, if you have questions, throw them on there. But I wanted to just sort of pivot a little bit and close by talking about our upcoming, I'm not even sure I would call it an event, our upcoming info session. And then was also hoping in the sort of parameters of that, if you could outline what some of your more sort of soft opening timeline is, if that feels comfortable, to the point of things changing very quickly. We haven't spoken since Monday, so everything might be different.
That's the world we're living in.
So what are the plans for Launchspace right now as far as soft opening of doors and ability of people to see the space, start making in the space? Is there a timeline, or is that still being planned?
So we are in the middle of a soft opening. So you can sign up for a membership. It is limited. So what we're doing right now is we're really figuring out the hours of operation. And right now what we've landed on is, the laser and robotics studios open 12 to 5. The art and design room is open 12 to 5. The pottery is going to be coming online towards the end of the month. Woodworking is online. That has limited hours and that has a lot more tool training. So how it works is, you can go to our website, launchspace-orange.com. There's a memberships and classes tab. You can sign up for a membership there. You can also email me, Brianna@launchspace-orange.com, to get some additional information. And there is a lot of information on our website as well. You can sign up to volunteer, you can sign up to teach a class, or offer a class submission form to host a class. And so right now we're just trying to get people in the space, whether it's tours, classes, or signing up for memberships. If you sign up for a membership, then you let us know what tools you want to get trained on, and we set up the tool training with the steward. We have different volunteer stewards for each studio: woodworking, robotics and IT, and pottery. The art and design room, we have a steward for, but there's not a lot of tool training that happens in there. It's more about taking classes to learn the skills around the studio. And then, we do have a YouTube channel, so there are some things on there about marbling. So you could get a membership and watch our YouTube video and come in and make a marbled card or whatever it is at our marbling station. So, so you can get a membership. And then I would say definitely like our social media, the Instagram, which is Launchspace_orange, and our Facebook page, Launchspace. And that's probably the best way to keep updated on classes that are coming up, events, and the different things that are happening in the space. We do have a lot of volunteers in here weekly getting the space ready. And when I say ready, like rehabbing furniture or hanging things on walls. So the space is kind of constantly changing. So we are looking for volunteers. We're looking for members. We're looking for people to teach classes. You can teach a class at any time. And yeah, we are slowly reopening in that way. We just want to get people into the space and the capacity that they're looking for, so that we can start to work around having people in the space and then starting to firm up some of the details.
That is awesome. That's so awesome. Thank you for that overview. And I will just add to that to say, so some people might know, and we're definitely going to do some longer shows about this, but we're opening a local art gallery in the Mill District. Similarly, we are sort of fingers crossed for Memorial Day weekend, but this has been a very touch and go time. And so in the lead up to that, I have been looking around for places where I can have info sessions about the gallery, because it's a very artist forward gallery. And I will talk more about that another time. And so one of the things that Brianna and I decided to do is have an info session about the gallery, an opportunity for artists in North Amherst on May 6th. And we're still figuring out the time, so you can definitely go on Launchspace social media, Mill District social media, and stay tuned for a time. And we're going to couple that with a tour of the Launchspace space, which, as Brianna said, is 13,000 square feet. And I got a tour the other day and it is phenomenal. I couldn't believe what the space looked like, how much room there was, especially as we're talking about feeling comfortable in spaces, especially indoor spaces. You know, it's really spaces like Launchspace that I think allow us to make that transition a little more gently sometimes, because it's big, it's spacious. I felt really comfortable in there. We were masked the whole time, but it still felt, you know, just fun. And I'm excited for people to come take a tour and to get more info about the gallery in North Amherst, because we're going to keep building these partnerships, and I'm super psyched about that. So May 6th, be on the lookout. Go to Launchspace's website and social media to volunteer, to teach a class, to just get involved, because it's just beyond cool. It is helpful, it's supportive, it's fun. It's an amazing space that you guys have built.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would say we also have a newsletter that you can sign up for, the newsletter on our website. So
yes, nice. Brianna, thank you so much for your time this morning. This has been so awesome, and I'm really excited to keep planning things with you and partnering on things.
I know, I love it. I love the connection for our artists to have a gallery space. It's just it's another partnership. I love partnerships.
I love partnerships. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we're going to talk really soon.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And bye.
Okay, bye.